And over the past several years, as part of the various NEEM committees that people from ICE or myself participate in, we've been trying to figure out how to collect those metrics, describe those success attributes, and we spent a lot of time discussing what color the sky is, how good it is to floss your teeth, how important a fat-free diet is, but where is the real hard metrics about using NEEM or not using NEEM? And in ICE, we've somewhat taken a very pragmatic approach about the integration of NEEM and how to accomplish that. We've developed a number of application development tools. One of those will be presented here on Thursday about creating NEEM exchange packages, which certainly makes programmer productivity that much higher. But that's not something that the business users see directly. They see it in lower integration costs. They see it in quicker time to market. But we don't have the hard and fast experience from the special agents about how NEEM is making their life better. And we're hoping over the next year, as I said earlier, that we're going to get those metrics, and we're going to derive most of that from the amount of information that is consumed by external entities and try to assign some values to how effectively we communicate. But more importantly, we're going to concentrate on the sheer number of information exchange packets or IEPDs that we create in order so that this information can be shared with a larger community. And that's a tough metric to kind of sell to people, but it's something that we can hold out and say to a large community, here's what we used to do, which is closed, which is opaque, and here's what we're doing today, which is open and transparent and something that can be consumed by a larger community. Additionally, it exposes what we have as our vocabulary. And one of the things that I guess Shemendra Paul is starting to push is the semantic harmonization, which is a fancy term for I think is just everybody using the same terms to call a dog and a cow and know what that means. And the better that we get about using a common language, what we describe as a case or what we describe as a subject, what we describe as a person of interest, is something that will go a long way for us to be able to have a effective communication with our law enforcement partners, with the business community, with the workforce as we look at how to do worksite enforcement and identify illegal aliens in the workplace, or how to identify how to manage detainee health information, or interact with child care systems as we kind of inadvertently sometimes separate families in the pursuit of our mission. And that's going to be what our criteria is going to be moving forward. Somewhat contradictory, one of the development approaches, and this is for the integrator specifically, is we have come up with a kind of a pragmatic compromise about how to use NEEM for transmission internal to ICE systems versus to information that's exchanged externally. And this is something, as I saw Donna come in, I was hoping I'd be able to get to this point before she got here, is that internally we don't see a real value in using NEEM for ICE-to-ICE application communication. There's some complexity, change management, documentation that sometimes slows down application developers, and we're trying to eliminate the excuse that some of our integrators find for producing documentation or defining what their exchanges are. And we've developed an internal XML model that's based upon our enterprise data model, which we do publish to Donna, so we get at least half credit. But as those services or as that data becomes externally consumable, that's where we're starting to apply the rigor of encoding it inside of a NEEM IEPD, forcing that in terms of an exchange model that we use with our external partners. But we're trying to balance what we do internally versus what we expose to the outside. And this is a bit of an experiment. We're going to see how it works. But in the last several months, we have awarded several major contracts for the development of a set of services that will revolutionize how ICE performs several aspects of its business processing. We have a data center, or ostensibly a call center, up in Burlington, Vermont, that receives information queries from state and locals across the country on being able to determine the status of an individual that's either come under arrest or investigation. And that service center provides critical information to state and local about the status of a given individual. And that system was basically a set of cobbled together silos that had a lot of manual interaction. And we have significantly redesigned that into a broad collection of services that will consume data from external sources as well as internal sources, and provide those people servicing those calls an integrated picture of an individual's immigration history, the information needed to determine their status, and to be able to provide timely responses back to the caller or to the state and local law enforcement entity who's trying to get an answer. And this system will reach out across DHS as well as over into FBI in terms of looking at rap sheets and other information that may be available to determine that individual's threat to the community. And this environment will be a broad, like, as I said, a broad collection of services, and we're not quite sure what percentage of those are going to be using NEEM for exchange, but clearly the external ones will be heavily leveraging that environment. We're hoping that this family of applications and services is something that we're going to be using as our model to see how effective NEEM can be in terms of reducing our costs, developing a faster system for time to market, and which is an odd term, I guess, for law enforcement systems, but it's something that we're going to measure and monitor very carefully, and we're hoping that it's going to be a broad success and that I won't get too much criticism from DHS's Enterprise Data Management Office for our somewhat pragmatic application of NEEM and how to use it. And with that, I'll pass it back to Jeremy. Did you want to have questions now or hold that to the end?
We'll, if it's all right with the audience, we'll go ahead and get through the 15 minutes or so for each of the speakers, and then open it up across the entire panel for discussion after that. Next on the agenda is a gentleman who nobody really knows what he did prior to 5 years ago, which is probably a scary thought. Clark Smith is the executive for program and technology for the program manager's information sharing environment, which is part of the DNI. Prior to that, Clark has a background and was in the Department of Justice, where he was also responsible for the development of the law enforcement information sharing program that has become the cornerstone of the Department of Justice outreach across state, local, and tribal entities, as well as the other federal entities. So with that, I'll turn it over to Clark.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'll let you guys know, before I joined the federal government, I was selling child care software across the country. That's no joke. We built a national child care information system so families could find child care locally and use the web to do that at different times. And then we also use the data out of that. This was back in the 1990s and early 2000s. We used the data out of that to then feed information on the cost of child care in an area to build child care subsidy programs up so we could support families in need. Prior to that, I was doing other stuff that we don't talk about. Large underwater cylindrical objects was the only thing I'm allowed to say. My background is in the application of technology to to problems that people have and trying to use technology to solve those problems. And my current job is around something called information sharing environment, which is in the law. For those who don't know, it's a commonly used term for lots of different things, but it's actually prescripted in the law to build an environment in government across state, local, tribal, federal government, private sector, and our foreign partners around the sharing of terrorism, homeland security, and weapons of mass destruction information. This is information that the government has deemed should be shared widely and broadly, should not have lots of restrictions on it for certain roles, but the people that need to have the information for what they do. And there's an office, a small little office inside the Director of National Intelligence, the DNI, which is challenged with making this happen across the government. And so I have the illustrious job of working the technology and program issues of this job. And we've been working with NEAM for a number of years. We've been supporting NEAM for many years. We support lots of different activities inside of NEAM and see ourselves as a very strong silent partner in what NEAM's trying to do, because we believe the strategy of information sharing is founded upon what's going on in NEAM. So let me say that real clearly. And I'm going to tell a couple of stories and kind of touch a couple of points and kind of hopefully inform some folks on what our experiences have been and kind of what we see as a future with this area. And hopefully it will give you kind of the high-level pieces of what we see as going on. First thing is there's lots of many elements to NEAM. One of the challenges I've always had in describing NEAM, or GJXDM as we used to call it so affectionately, was what is it? And we've kind of had to parse that out. When you're doing policy work, sometimes the smallest little details become real important. And NEAM to me is two things that I worry. It's lots of different things, but the ones that I worry about is one is it's a data model. It's a core data model that people have also had built extensions to, and they harmonize in extensions. There's value in that. There's value in the data model. But to me, actually, the more important part of NEAM, the part that I worry about and care about the most, is the methodology to build IEPDs and to build these business process-driven IEPDs. This is kind of what Phil was touching on a little bit. To document those information exchanges. And let me tell you a story as to why that's so important to me. Up until, actually just for now still, you drive from New York to Washington. And as you're driving down the highway, you see signs that say, if you see something suspicious, please call this number. In New Jersey, they've got a number. In Delaware and Bridge, they've got a number. In Delaware, they've got a number. And getting to Maryland, they've got a number. At the tunnel right around here, they've got a number. And you get into D.C., and they've got a number. The hard part is that let's say you see something going on, and you're making phone calls, and you're calling these people, and different folks are calling it in. There's not a national system that ties that together. There's not a national electronic system. Let's use that carefully. And so it depends upon the good graces of folks inside of our government, the folks who are out there every day protecting us and doing the things that they do, to have the champions who go out and make the phone calls and somebody say, hey, let me call up and down the coast here and find out if they've also seen that red car that's been doing some strange things up and for this one day. And that's one trip. That's one trip in one day, much less a trip over 6 months where people are doing stuff. And we're very aware that folks who want to do us harm are doing pre-operational planning. And so there needs to be some way of tying together these reports. Now, there's lots. So that's basic. That's real simple. Yes, let's tie together the reports. But then all of a sudden you start pulling that out. You start saying, well, we're many years after 9/11, and why isn't this done yet? Why wasn't this done immediately? And you start asking yourself some questions. There's huge privacy issues there. Do we want our government collecting information on what's not criminal behavior, not behavior that you would normally arrest somebody on, and you're putting into a big database? So suddenly you've got a track record that, I like to go and get milkshakes at 10 o'clock at night, and that seems suspicious in certain towns, and or some other behaviors. So, you got to ask that question. You start asking the question, what is that database used for? And what goes on from there. So we came together and we said we want to do something called suspicious activity reporting. Everyone knows we need to be able to do suspicious activity reporting. And then the next question was, well, in some towns what's suspicious reporting over here is not suspicious over here, and we're going to have lots of disparities in data. And so are we creating a database that's really not useful, yet later when something happens we can go back and we can find the data, and is it really what we want? And so we started working those problems. And this was many years ago, and we sat down and the big policymakers came together and they said, we want to have some system, some ability to share these reports.